Of our jury panel. Mr. Clarke, you may continue.
Dr. Gerdes, you have conceded that if in fact a signal, such as in the photographs that have been shown to this jury, are the result of cross-hybridization, then they are not the result of contamination, correct?
Correct.
As far as the creation of your chart, and in fact there were a number of charts shown to the jury that discussed and had bars or graphs of contamination, you recall those?
I do.
In those instances in which, for instance, there is cross-hybridization instead of contamination, those charts are biased as far as the presence of contamination in the LAPD laboratory, correct?
I think we tried to explain what the degree of bias would be. And so, for instance, on the 1.1, that was 7.6% of the strips. And on the 1.3, that was 25%. So if it's biased, we attempted to explain the bias.
In other words, the way the charts are written assumes that what might be cross-contamination is contamination.
Objection. Argumentative sustained.
Do those charts reflect, then, and include in those graphs of contamination incidents which may be the result of cross-hybridization?
Only for the specific case of the 1.1 allele and the 1.3 allele.
Is it then the case that what may be a graph that you show 100% of runs contaminated, that if in fact the 1.3 and 1.1 alleles are present, then those charts overstate the contamination?
I don't believe so, because the reason I analyzed it in that manner was to look at more than one strip to attempt to find a confirmation.
Does that mean, Dr. Gerdes, when you describe the 25% and the 7.6%, that your charts may overstate the contamination at the Los Angeles Police Department by over 32%?
Objection. Vague. Question. Oral.
Remember, those are the percentage of those specific alleles, and those are only 2 of the 6 alleles. So in terms of, if I could look at my notes.
Do you need to look at your notes for some portion of this answer?
For an example, yes, for an answer. If we sum the total 1.1 plus 1.3 that could possibly be DX or cross-contamination, that could be 16.5% of those alleles.
Dr. Gerdes, what I'm asking is when you say the month of May of 1994, and you show, and I'm not trying to give an exact number for the month of May, let's just assume you have a number, whether it's 40%, 50%, or 60%. You have a bar graph that approximates that percentage, correct?
Objection. Vague as to which chart, which bar graph. Sustained.
With regard to these graphs, there's one that describes run contamination and strip contamination for May, June, and July, correct?
Correct.
As far as that particular graph, and let's assume for May there's a certain percentage of strip contamination, whatever that is, all right?
Yes.
That figure, whatever that percentage is, does that include these 1.1 and 1.3 instances?
This states the chart. This chart speaks for itself.
Are you talking about the strip chart or the run chart?
Talking about the chart that has both.
Now, on the strip chart, those would be included. On the run chart, the entire date would be evaluated with one sample versus the other so that I can confirm whether that or not that was contamination or not.
I'm not sure you can see that from there. Perhaps
Okay.
if you would, could you step down?
And this is 1297, if I recollect correctly.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Gerdes, with regard to this particular exhibit, is this the chart that I just questioned you about as far as demonstrating for May, June, and July your opinion of contamination levels by both runs and strips?
Yes, it is.
All right, Doctor, would you just take a half step back so you're shielding the court reporter? Thank you.
And if I could, Dr. Gerdes, let's take June, where there's an indication of 33% of strips.
Excuse me, you're pointing to May?
I'm sorry, yes, you're right. Referring to May, where there appears to be a green block that includes strip contamination and/or artifacts. Is that right?
That's correct.
Does that 33% include the 1.1 alleles?
At that point, it does, yes.
Does it include the 1.3 alleles?
Yes, it does.
The 1.1 alleles can be the result of DX activity and not contamination, correct?
That's true.
The 1.3 activity can be a result of cross-hybridization under your own testimony, correct?
That's true.
33% includes both of those, doesn't it?
It does.
And in fact, if those are not from contamination, those overstate the percentage of contamination, don't they?
They would by less than 16% overall.
So it's your view that it only overstates it to a certain extent, but the chart is still correct.
If I can explain, Your Honor?
Well, the
No.
question is,
No, no.
under
Your Honor,
the...
may I the witness explain?
No?
He
He has to answer the question. He can explain his answers on redirect examination.
Dr. Gerdes, my question to you is, in your opinion, does the 33% then overstate the occurrence of contamination if, in fact, those 1.1 and 1.3 alleles are not from contamination?
With regards to that specific strip, this specific bar, that might be overstated. That's why I did the analysis the way I did to look to the next one over, which is the run contamination. So if we can look at May specifically, I can explain how I confirm whether or not these are contaminants.
Incidentally, these percentages and your inclusion of those 1.3 and 1.1s, was that also true in the 31% in June?
That's why it's labeled strip contamination and/or artifacts. It's clearly labeled as that. That's what it is.
Objection non-responsive, Your Honor.
Sustain. Ask the question again.
Dr. Gerdes, when you calculated 31% for the month of June, did that include the 1.1 and 1.3 alleles that may not be from contamination?
Yes.
The 17% reported in July, did those also include the 1.1 and 1.3 alleles that may not be contamination at all?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. You may resume the stand. Photograph, now that the projector is back, I'd ask to be marked as People's
568.
568, which I previously shown to counsel.
Proceed.
Dr. Gerdes, showing you one more photograph. Does that appear to be another hybridization record photograph that you reviewed as part of your review of the strips at the LAPD?
If I could just check it.
Sure.
It does.
And that particular run was conducted, well, that reflects a certain hybridization record number.
Hybridization 101.
And do you have a Xerox copy of what's contained?
No, I
in
have
that?
a photo.
And a photo as well?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to display this photo. Just for purposes of identifying this particular photograph, Dr. Gerdes, what date was this run conducted?
1/14/94.
So January of 94?
Correct.
And the analyst was whom?
Aaron Riley?
Now, this, and the confirming analyst was Colin Yamauchi?
Yes.
This was one of the strips that you looked at as part of your review of the LAPD DNA work?
This series of strips, yes.
What was contained on this series of strips?
The first 5 items are actually evidence items. Then there is a standard number 5, a negative control, and then another evidence item.
Okay, when you say the first 5 items were casework, that's casework but not related to this case, correct?
That's correct.
In other words, this is an example of your review of their work that included actual other criminal cases, but not this one.
That's correct.
Is that why it has a number that appears to be 93 dash and then a series of numbers?
That's a code number for a different case, yes.
And as part of your review, that type of number tells you that it's casework, correct?
Correct.
Instead of like CTS or known reference samples and so forth.
Correct.
Now, in this particular instance, the analyst, and there were 8 strips run in this instance.
On this particular page, yes.
Now, if we could focus in on the written results column off to the far right. That column and the first 5 strips, I'm sorry, are evidence samples again, correct?
That's correct.
The next sample, which is in, what would it be, number 6, is labeled standard number 5,
Correct.
and that would be a known blood from a known person.
Correct.
Or positive control.
It's a positive control, yes.
Below that is labeled neg control,
Yes.
and is that what's referred to as a reagent blank or cloth control?
That's correct.
And then lastly, is there another casework sample,
That's correct.
which looks like it has a number beginning with 89?
Correct.
Does that indicate the year of the case?
I believe so.
So is it the case then that the Los Angeles Police Department DNA laboratory would actually look at cases that were, for instance, several years old as part of their DNA typing?
Apparently that's true.
Now, off to the right, where all the results are written, there appear to be many different alleles noted for all the samples, correct?
That's true.
As part of the review of a run, an analyst wants to look at the negative control, for instance. Is that right?
Correct.
And is that the type of control that an analyst would look at first?
Generally, yes.
Or if not first, very close to first?
Yes.
Because that control is very important in determining whether or not a PCR run is contaminated.
Correct.
Now, in this particular instance, the analyst noted, as far as the negative control, the presence of what looked like 4 alleles, correct?
Yes. On the negative control, which again should have no DNA, there's a 1.2, a 2, a 4, and a 1.1.
Now, if we could move up to the appropriate strip, where the actual dots are noted, that would be the second strip from the bottom, Dr. Gerdes?
Correct. From the
And we'll see if we can place an arrow just so it's clear which strip we're referring to. And it would be second from the bottom, Dr. Gerdes?
That's correct.
Is the arrow currently pointing to that particular strip right there?
Yes.
Now, that negative control should show no dots in any of the probes,
No,
correct?
it should be totally clean. There should be nothing there.
And we're seeing a 1 dot,
Yes.
a 2 dot,
Yes.
a 4 dot.
Yes.
Is there a C dot?
Yes. On my photo there is.
But faint, would that be a fair description?
Yes.
Is there a 1.1 dot?
Yes.
Similarly faint?
About the same as C.
Now, the 1.2, 1.34 dot, without getting into its interpretation in this particular sample, is showing a clear reaction, correct?
It is.
Is there a reaction in the 1.3 dot?
No.
And lastly, the all but 1.3, that's going to basically show a reaction if any allele is present other than the 1.3, right?
Correct.
So that's another sample that you use to interpret the results.
Yes.
Now, if we could go back to the actual results section, and just first before we do that, then this is a signal to an analyst that there is a problem with this run, correct?
Yes.
It's a clear signal, isn't it?
This is gross contamination.
All right, if we could return to the results column in the written portion and go to the far right, and that's fine as far as zoom in or zoom out. There is the appearance of many alleles in each of these samples, correct?
That's correct.
It's fairly easy to determine that there's contamination in this run, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, the analyst noted that contamination, correct?
They did.
It's correct that the controls worked in this instance in revealing contamination, correct, Dr. Gerdes?
In this particular case, yes.
And in fact, they clearly worked.
In this particular case, yes.
Dr. Gerdes, as far as the materials you received in this case, you were provided, I believe you described, materials relating to DNA testing by LAPD,
Yes.
Cellmark,
Yes.
and the Department of Justice.
Yes.
And did you review all of those materials?
I did.
You are also provided, and in particular, reports from each of those laboratories.
That's correct.
I'm referring to DNA work as well. As far as
Specifically,
reports.
yes.
Were you provided any of the serological reports, that is, the results obtained by conventional serology?
No.
Were you provided bench notes relating to the DNA work?
Yes.
Were you provided all of the x-rays or autoradiographs?
The majority, yes.
Are there some you're aware of that you were not provided?
Yes.
What about the D1S80 films? Or they're somewhat like autoradiographs in appearance, correct?
Yes.
Were you provided those?
Yes.
Were you provided photographs, for instance, of typing strips? And I'm referring to the casework itself in this case.
Yes.
Were you provided photographs of product gels, as they're called, where there's an evaluation of the presence of DNA and how much?
Yes.
Were you provided photographs, well, or other, let me rephrase that. Were you provided x-rays or copies of those x-rays of what are called slot blots that are another method of determining approximately how much DNA is present?
I have not seen the original slot blots from either the DOJ or from Cellmark. As far as the autorad itself, I've seen Xerox copies.
So you haven't seen any of the slot blots that quantitate.
I've seen the recorded results. I have not seen the autorad that goes with that other than a copy.
Does Cellmark record the actual amounts from a slot blot, or is the x-ray the data from which they interpret it and don't note it in a written document?
They don't note it.
So therefore, is it correct that you've seen no reports or photographs detailing the amount of DNA that Cellmark determines from a sample?
Not directly from Cellmark.
Have you received it from some other source?
From the Department of Justice
Well, I'm referring
on
to
the
Cellmark.
same item.
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't make it clear.
It was related to me through just, I believe it was related to me through discussions with testimony by Robin Cotton, and I read those testimonies in which she specifically stated what the DNA amounts were on the items in question.
Were you provided materials about proficiency testing by all 3 laboratories?
Yes,
And did you review all of that material?
yes,
Were you provided, and you've already described receiving and reviewing each of the validation DQ alpha strips at the Los Angeles Police Department, did you review validation materials from the other 2 laboratories as well?
I did.
Did you review the accreditation materials from Cellmark Diagnostics, that is accreditation by the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors?
I've seen documents related to that, yes.
And were those documents specific to Cellmark Diagnostics?
Yes,
Were there also similar materials from the Department of Justice that you received and reviewed?
I may have, I don't recall offhand seeing the specific document on that.
You have described reading some of the transcripts in this case, that is transcripts of testimony.
I read the transcripts of individuals that related to DNA. I haven't read the transcripts of the entire case.
What witnesses' testimony have you read the transcripts of?
Mazzola, Fung, Colin Yamauchi, Gary Sims, Renee Montgomery, Robin Cotton, and I may have forgotten somebody, but basically anyone who dealt with either sample collection or DNA analysis.
That's a lot of transcripts, isn't it?
It is.
Can you approximate for us how many hours you've spent just reading those transcripts? Or days, or weeks, whatever's easier.
Perhaps, all total a week or 2 time.
1 or 2 weeks to read the transcripts of each of those witnesses, all of those witnesses?
Perhaps a week or 2, yes.
Have you received any videotapes for your review?
I've seen clips of videotapes, but I've never received them myself.
By clips, do you mean on television?
Yes, on TV or played during the course of the trial.
As opposed to a videotape that you received and
I
watched?
did not receive any videotapes.
Are there any other materials that you were provided with respect to this case?
I believe you've covered most of them.
You reviewed all of those materials, correct?
Yes.
You made notes as a portion of your review?
Yes.
You compiled a chart?
Yes.
As far as your notes, how many notes, can you state it in terms of pages, how many notes you took? And I'm setting aside the chart with the raw data on it.
Most of my notes were taken during the, I had 1 or 2 pages of notes on the lab site visits. I had perhaps a page or 2 involved in analyzing or looking at the strips for each particular area as far as just summarizing, and that's all.
You've used the term site visit. Site visit has a special meaning in science, doesn't it?
Well, it can.
What does it mean?
Well, that's what you would call, for instance, if you were applying for a grant from the NIH and they requested a site visit, that would simply mean they wanted to come and look at your lab and inspect it.
That's a fairly formalized procedure, isn't it, for an inspection of your laboratory?
Yes,
And in fact, that inspection can have serious consequences to the laboratory, correct?
that's correct.
A site visit is performed by an authorized personnel, for instance, from a government agency, right?
Correct.
Is it your view that your visits to each of the laboratories in this case were site visits?
Now, perhaps it's a misnomer. I visited the laboratory. I'm under no authority of any accrediting agency or anything like that.
When you reviewed the results and all of this raw data, did there ever come a question in your mind about how a result was interpreted or how a procedure was in fact undertaken by the analyst?
I was provided with all of the protocols from the laboratory, so I had access to those materials.
Well, what I'm asking, though, is other than from the materials, even if you reviewed all of those, were there any questions in your mind about how an analyst performed a particular task? Did that ever happen?
Based on all the information I have, all of those things we just discussed, no.
So from your review of the materials, you had no questions whatsoever?
No, and remember, I've seen these, with the specific example of Cellmark and DOJ, I've done other cases involved in those particular laboratories, so I'm familiar with their protocols and procedures.
And you felt that that was a sufficient familiarity so that you could review all of these materials from all of these samples and have no questions of the analysts whatsoever?
If you've ever seen Gary Sims' notes, they're extremely detailed. All you have to do is read the notes.
And that was, in your view, sufficient for you to be able to render all of your conclusions thus far in this case?
Yes.
If I might, Your Honor?
Uno más.
Protocols that you have described previously as being used in your own laboratory, do you always follow, or do your technicians always follow those protocols exactly?
In any laboratory, you have the protocol is followed as carefully as possible and exactly as possible. If there's any situation that occurs where that can't be the case, then the technician is instructed to ask the director whether or not changes can be made and which changes can and can't be made.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess at this time for the day. Before we do that, I just wanted to bring one matter to your attention before we conclude today. About a year ago, when I first was assigned this case, I received a lot of unsolicited resumes from people who wanted to come work for the court, and I got literally dozens of these. And I got one in particular that I recollect because it looked interesting, but it went in the same place that all the others went, which is into the round file. This individual persisted and sent it again, and so I figured at least I would read it again more seriously, and it turned out that this person was a high honors graduate from Claremont McKenna College, which, as you know, is one of this country's finest small liberal arts colleges here on the West Coast, that she had scored in the high 90s percentile on the LSAT. And looking at her work experience, it was impressive, a number of things that she had done. And the thing that really caught my eye is that she had worked as a speechwriter for a member of Parliament in Great Britain. So I took her on as a volunteer non-law clerk, since she had not gone to law school yet. And I figured, if nothing else, I can at least have her go pick up my robe at the laundry and save me the time to do that. And she has been with us almost a year as a complete volunteer at no cost to the taxpayers of our county. And actually, as you know, she's probably saved the taxpayers thousands of dollars with all of the goods and services that she's gotten for you, all the free meals at the restaurants, all the entertainment, all the wonderful things that have happened. She's also been introduced to basic legal research by the Pepperdine law students who work for me. And, you know, her primary job was to keep you all entertained. And I think she's done a great job. She now leaves us to begin her studies at a prestigious law school on the East Coast. And I know that you join with me in wishing her good luck with her studies. We all know that given her demonstrated talents, that she will obviously be highly successful in whatever it is that she chooses to do in her career. And in fact, I suspect that in my years of retirement, my claim to fame will be that she was once my law clerk. And we thank you very much. All right, and now, having said that, please remember all my admissions to you. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Don't form any opinions. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you. Have a wonderful weekend. As far as the jury is concerned, we'll see you all Monday morning, 9 o'clock sharp. Dr. Gerdes, you may step down, 9 o'clock Monday. All right, you all have a nice weekend.